again. I am so completely overwhelmed by how much love my Korea travel tips video has been getting over the last few months, and I'm so happy that people have found it helpful. And I also noticed that a lot of people who are commenting, they're like, I'm gonna be visiting at the end of the year, I'm gonna be visiting next year, I'm gonna be visiting next month. I wanted to, give back to the community and share some more tips. So if you don't know and you haven't watched my other videos about my Korea travels, I have traveled to Korea 3 times prior, and 2 of those times I went solo. I've grown to really love solo traveling. It has so many perks, but at the end of the day, humans are social creatures, right? So even for someone as introverted as me, I also get a little stir crazy without human contact for like 3 to 4 days. So today, I'm going to share with you some tips and methods on how to make friends and meet people while in Korea. Of course, I'm sure that these can also be applied to other countries as well. Some of these might sound familiar to you because I've touched on them in my other videos, like my solo travel FAQ or other Korea travel videos, but hopefully this compiled list of tips will be helpful for y'all. I got my water, I got my matcha, and I got my notes. Let's go. Woo, where are my notes? The first tip that I have is to join a Facebook group. Now I know, who's on Facebook nowadays? But there are a ton of Facebook groups actually dedicated to people traveling, people who are abroad. So you can look up like expats in Korea or like South Korea travel planning. There's a ton of these like travel oriented Facebook groups that would be really helpful for you to join, not just to get travel tips, but also just to meet other people who will be traveling as well. This is a good method for you to meet people whether you are traveling for a short period of time or for a longer period of time like you're studying abroad. Alright, so next method that I have for you is to join a language exchange party or group. And you can find these either through like Instagram, through Facebook as well, or on meetup.com. That's actually how I found all the ones that I have joined. And to give you a general gist of what they are, these language exchange parties are usually like an hour to 2 hours long. They usually meet up every week at like a cafe. So when you go, you have to buy a drink from the cafe, to like kind of pay for them renting the space. And then you get divvied up into groups, and then within your group you kind of have like a worksheet of sorts to kind of go through basic questions to kind of get the talking and discussion going, and what they usually have is they'll have a dedicated time for like English, and then they have dedicated time to speak in Korean so that you are exchanging language. So basically you get to help others practice their English, and then you can also practice your Korean. Sometimes these groups will organize lunch or dinner depending on the time of day that you meet, and then like organize activities to hang out afterwards for additional fees. Or you can just, if you really clicked with the group that you were hanging out with for those 2 hours, you might end up going out to eat with them, So it's a really easy way and kind of relaxed way to meet new people, whether they are other foreigners or they are like local Koreans who just want to get better at their English. The thing with these groups is each group will have their own atmosphere, so you might have to go to a few of them to figure out which one you like. Some of them might be more language focused and some of them might be more like social focused. So it really just depends on like what you vibe with and going from there. So speaking of language exchange, and this is for those of you who might be traveling for a longer period of time, so like, I don't know, like a month or 2 upwards. So another way for you to kind of meet people is to work at a language exchange cafe. And these are typically run by Koreans to facilitate private lessons with local Koreans to speak with foreigners so that they can practice their speaking. The way that you can find these opportunities is through like Workaway or like helpx. They usually post their listings there. So in exchange for working at these language exchange cafes, you will most likely get like free room and board. And if you were already planning on staying at hostels or stuff like that, this is a really great deal for you because the dorming situation is basically like a hostel. You'll share like a room with 1 or 2 other people. Hours of work will depend on the cafe that you're working at and the amount of students that they have. So this is a great opportunity for you to meet other travelers, so other foreigners, as well as local Koreans, because these students that they usually get will range from all ages. They'll be like young professionals trying to, get better at their English because they're prepping to study abroad or to work abroad, or they might even range to like retired people who, now that they are retired, they want to go travel the world and they want to brush up on their English. It's really, really fun to meet these all walks of life and just kind of have an opportunity to talk to them. And so this was something that I did this last trip that I went when I was there for 2 months, and I was in Busan for a whole month working at a language exchange cafe, and that is also where I met the majority of my friends. I made really great friends with the other teachers that were there, so the other volunteers. It was really nice to have that like built-in community, so you could just like whenever you go home, you could be like, hey, has anyone gotten dinner yet? Like, who wants to go grab dinner from the market down the street with me? And the students also became such great friends of mine. Like, one of the girls even introduced me to the dance studio that she goes to, and we ended up taking dance classes together, so that was really, really fun. And I would never have found that dance studio if not for her, because it was like a local dance studio, On a side note, workaway is also a great way for you to meet other travelers, because you have the option to set in your profile the time frame in the countries that you will be visiting, and then find other travelers that will match up with your schedule. So the next way of meeting friends or meeting people in general is based off of your interests. Whatever you're interested in, dive deep into that when you're in a different country. If you're into hiking, join a hiking meetup or a hiking group. Me personally, I'm super into skincare. I am very active in the skincare community on Instagram. And so I actually met one of my friends in Korea that way, because I was really into this brand, and she had this like small online shop that carried the brand that was really hard to find in the US. It was at that time Choi Arake, and that was like 3 to 4 years ago, and now it's like available globally. It's crazy how brands grow. I bought from her shop and formed this connection with her, and we just kind of kept tabs of each other through social media. And when I finally visited Korea, I was like, hey, I'm actually in Seoul and would love to meet you in person. And from there, like, our friendship just grew. So she has become one of my closest contacts when I'm in Korea, aka my only contact. Another one is joining like Airbnb experiences. So there's a lot of different classes or cultural experiences on Airbnb experiences hosted by usually like local Koreans, and so that is also a really nice way to not only have a unique experience, but also it's an opportunity for you to meet people, basically. And so next we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about specific apps that you can use to meet people or talk to people. Like I mentioned before, meetup.com, Facebook, workaway, Airbnb, all of those are like online platforms that you can use to find opportunities to meet people, but the apps that I'm going to go into are kind of more social oriented for the purpose of talking to others and stuff like that. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the obvious one, which is like Tinder or Bumble, like dating apps. My impression of dating apps in Korea is that like 70% of the people on these dating apps are just looking for like friends with benefits or stuff like that. So proceed at your own caution with those. But a dating app is a dating app, right? So you kind of have to like know your expectations when you're going on them. So there's that. On the flip side, I do actually prefer Bumble BFF, which is like purely meant for making friends, and it's going to be like people of the same gender as you. So I met quite a few girls who were also traveling or like recently moved to Korea through Bumble BFF and chatted with them. And I also met up with a girl who actually was one of my subscribers, and I was really, really touched because at that time I only had like 100 subscribers. So I was like, oh my gosh, you know me? I'm really, really grateful to have met her, and then it was really fun to hear about her travel stories. I feel like I had a much better peace of mind when I was using Bumble BFF as opposed to the other apps. There's also some apps that are like supposedly for language exchange, which is great also. Like I mentioned previously, language exchange is a great opportunity to meet people. So there are also apps geared towards that, and some of them include like meeff or hellotalk. I personally did not use meeff as much. When I browsed through the profiles, like the interface looked more like Tinder. So there were some profiles that definitely, you know, were meant for hookups and stuff like that. The other app that I did use though is hellotalk, and hellotalk is structured kind of like a slash between Facebook and Twitter, because it's purely like statuses. But the whole purpose of the app is, you know, to have a community to help you further your language studies. So you can post things in the language that you're trying to study. So like, because I'm trying to further improve my Korean, I'd be like, 날씨 너무 좋다. And then if there was something wrong with what I said or how I spelled it, people can actually correct it and then comment on what I said. And people can DM each other once they see like people in their area or something like that. Like I've had a few people who message me based off of like these statuses that I uploaded. There was one time that I posted that I really wanted to eat hue, which is like raw fish in Korea, and I was like, but this is like a dish that I need to eat with other people because it's such a huge amount. I can't eat all of it by myself, and I also just don't know how to order it. So I posted that, and I actually made some friends that way because they're like, oh, I'll eat with you. The key with like any online interaction is you're going to get people who may not have the same intentions as you. So as a solo female traveler, that was something that I had to be hyper aware of. And that's also why I wasn't really keen on like the dating apps, because the probability of having those kinds of situations arise was just like way too high. So I was like, I'm not gonna deal with that. You know, I'm trying to be safe here. You're just going to have to use your best judgment in these cases and the people that reach out to you to see if you actually really want to meet up with them in person. But that's how it is with any kind of online interaction, honestly. So I wanted to point out, like, these language exchange apps will probably be your best bet in making a local Korean friend or meeting local Korean acquaintances, because otherwise it'll naturally be easier for you to make other foreigner friends. So the next app that I'm going to talk about, I actually personally did not use. I tried to use, was not successful, but my friends who told me about it, they had pretty good success. The app is kakaochat, but there's a function in kakaochat that I don't know if it actually exists anymore. There's an option to create a open chat room in kakaochat. So from their experience, it seemed like you'll get a ton of bad experiences because creepers exist, guys. But they also were able to make really, really good friends, and that's why they decided to just close the chat room, because they were like, we have friends now, we don't need to make any more, this is good. That is also a method for those of you who are brave enough. I am not, clearly. I tried making one for meeting like fellow Monbibis when I was in Seoul, but alas, I did not meet anyone. I don't know if it's the safest way to meet people, but like this video says, it is a way, so, you know, telling it to you. Speaking of not so safe ways of meeting people, there's also the method of just talking to random people on the street. Note that scammers are a thing in Korea. A lot of times these scammers will target foreigners and try to lure them with like cultural experiences, and then through these cultural experiences they'll try to make them donate money and stuff like that. Be hyper aware of people who want to take you to different places and like try to get your information.
Well, duh.
But some of my good experiences are, I actually met this girl when I was at the Hangan, and I was just chilling there. She came up to me and started talking to me. She was speaking to me in Korean, and I was like, oh, I'm a foreigner. I know what you're saying, but I don't know how to reply to you. She ended up being like really surprised, and she's like, oh, I thought you were, you know, another Korean. We ended up talking for like 15 minutes. At first, I was like super cautious with what I was telling her, because I was like, oh, I don't want to have another experience of talking to people and then them trying to scam me, because that's definitely what happened the first time someone random approached me on the streets. And she never asked, you know, like, what are you doing? She never asked, oh, like, we should go hang out something or something like that. From that point, I felt a little bit safer because she never initiated anything that led to something else. So at the end of the conversation, I was actually the one who was like, hey, I would love to exchange contact information with you, because at that point I was like, I'm actually leaving for Busan tomorrow and she's from Busan. So I was like, I would love to keep your contact information so I could, you know, reach out to you if I need advice or suggestions on where to go in Busan. I ended up meeting up with her again when I came back to Seoul. So these are some of the methods and tips that I have personally had experience with, or know people who have experience with, that have led them to great friendships. But something that I want to talk about in general about making friends, like making friends as an adult is hard. Whether you're traveling, whether you're at home, it's just a hard thing to do. And a big part of that is you have to put yourself out there. If you don't put yourself out there to be accepting of these like relationships, these friendships, it's going to be hard for you to find people. I think a really big thing about making friends while you're traveling is the expectations of what these friendships will actually become. It's like, I have to accept that they will never become as deep of a friendship as they would be if I were back home. And the reasoning for that is a lot of these friendships are friendships of convenience. It doesn't mean that I value them any less. It's just the level of connection is going to be not as deep. And that's just a fact. If you were in the flip position and you met someone who was traveling to wherever you lived and you met them, but you know that they're going to be leaving in like a week or two, like, you're not going to first have time to make a deep enough connection with them. And secondly, you might not be putting enough effort as well, because you'll be like, oh, they'll be like leaving anyways, and it'll be like, what's the point of, you know, putting in that effort to form a super solid connection when you're never going to see them again. And this is something that I also had talked to a lot of people about while I was abroad. And another foreigner that I had met during a language exchange party, I remember asking them, I was like, so you lived here for a few months and you've gone to a few of these things, like, how many friends have you actually made through these events that you've maintained? And he was like, none. And I was like, okay, now I feel better about myself, because I thought it was just me traveling, but like a lot of these events and like experiences, they're just opportunities to meet people. You will meet some really cool people, but at the end of the day, a lot of these people that you meet and that you talk to, they'll be like friends for the day kind of deal. What I'm trying to say, I don't know, is make sure you have your expectations set when you are abroad, and for the people that you meet, like, understand that sometimes these friendships will be friendships of convenience. Understand that a lot of the times the local Koreans who may be seeking friendship with you are really seeking an opportunity to practice their English. It might sound bad, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that it's not a friend, right? So it's just understanding like where they're coming from and like what they seek out of the friendship. And then understanding like you have to put yourself out there, you have to initiate these friendships in order for them to actually become a friendship. For me personally, I think knowing like that expectation really broadened my view on things and allowed me to become more open to other people and just take these acquaintances and these relationships as they come. So I hope that this video was helpful, and I hope that you are able to implement some of these methods or tips to make some friends of your own, because it really is a great experience, and the more people that you talk to, the more experiences you can gather. I could not like emphasize that enough. That was probably the biggest takeaway for me for my travels is, you know, I love talking to people and learning about their life stories, their viewpoints, whether it be other foreigners or like the locals, like how they view the world and how they view adulting. Adulting was a really big thing that I talked about with people, because that's something that I'm going through, right? It's like taking that career break, and how they view careers and jobs and expectations of adulthood in their culture. So I personally had a blast talking to people and learning about that from their experiences. And so I would highly encourage everyone who is traveling to, talk to other people, because while you're visiting a country, it's like great to eat their foods and like to see all of these like historical places that you see in dramas in person. It's nothing really beats a cultural experience like given by the locals. Anyways, I think I'm going off track. I think I have talked too much, and I think that is all I have to say for this video. So thank you so much again for watching, and I hope this video was helpful. If you have any other topics related to Korea that you would love to see on my channel, feel free to comment down that below. And again, thank you guys so much for all the love and support, and I will see you guys next week. Bye! Good luck on making some friends to make your trip even more memorable. And remember, be safe, use good judgment, and have good intentions.